Doshiteru Yokuso YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Total War, the series where we analyze user-submitted, viewer-submitted replays and talk about different elements of the game that is Fall of the Samurai, the standalone expansion pack for Shogun 2 Total War. The first battle today here, Mag versus Edward on Tokai Valley. This was submitted by Mag. Thanks a lot, Mag. And what is the topic for today's episode? As you can see from your title, today we're all about using melee troops. How do you use these melee troops? What are they made of? What are their advantages? What are their disadvantages? Different ways that we could use them, and different advantages and disadvantages that they bring to the fight. Before we get to any of this, let's talk a little bit about the basic melee troops in Fall of the Samurai. We have classic trade-offs here CA has given us. First, you have the Spear Levy, which is basically your sort of meat shield unit, really. They're used for meat shield purposes, but we'll talk about them more in the future. Here they are. They have low morale, low attack, low defense, and basically no armor. They're peasants with sticks that you throw at the enemy guns so that they absorb stuff for you. We'll take a look at their usage in a bit. And then you have the next sort of basic type, which is the Kachi. We've got the Katana Kachi and the Yari Kachi. As you would expect, Katana Kachi are troops that are going to have a little bit more attack. Here they are. They are somewhat armored. They have 5 armor. And Yari Kachi will have defense. Kachi troops have more morale than the Spear Levy. And finally, you have the Shogutai and the Kyoto Police Forces, which are sort of like Katana Kachi and Yari Kachi, but they have less armor, more attack and defense respectively, and they have a little bit better morale, I believe. So the melee troops give you a good sort of selection between armor and morale and attack, and it depends really on the type of army that we're going to be bringing and dealing with today. So in this first sort of fight, I'm just going to park the camera up here in this nice position. And we're going to talk a little bit about, why do we really want to be bringing some sort of melee troops? I mean, what do they give us? Well, the first thing we need to look at is the fact that musket troops are usually busy either reloading or aiming before they fire. Most of their time is actually spent not doing anything. Well, by not doing anything, I mean either reloading or positioning themselves. So this leaves a huge gap of attack that you can attack a line infantry troop where it really can't do anything back to you. And even if it does fire at least once at you, you should be able to take the shot like the brave Katana Kachi you are and rush forward and kill the enemy. They also take a lot of casualties when they're in this process as well, when they're in the process of reloading or remaneuvering, and usually they're spread out in huge lines. They're going to be taking a lot of damage from melee charges, so melee troops do really well against line troops when you actually close the gap. And we're going to see how we can do that in different ways in this episode. Two-parted episode, if I must add. Most of the line infantry would have sort of like mediocre attack, 8, 6... 8 attack, 6 defense. These are your red bears. And then you have, of course, the elite troops who will have a little bit better in terms of their melee attack, but they'd still be no match for, say, a Katana Kachi. Finally, these sort of troops are essentially, melee troops are essentially more mobile because you can move them around all you want. They don't have any sort of range limitation. So there are many advantages to actually using a melee troop. And we're going to see that there are 2 main ways that we can use melee armies. But first, let's take a look at what's happening here in the battle. They pretty much both have, I'd say, about equal footing in terms of the line infantry battle. Edward here might have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to line. And this is what I like to call the first form of bringing melee contingents to your army, and this is the supplementary form. It's a form where I'm going to bring a corps of riflemen, or maybe a corps of melee, and I'm going to supplement it with some melee troops, or maybe some sort of line musket troops. I might have called them riflemen there by mistake. So in this case, for example, we could see that Mag here has a strong line contingent, and then he's supporting with a melee. And when you're using these sort of supportive, supplementary sort of troops, you want to avoid doing what Edward is doing here. Edward has thrown his melee troops the worst possible place that he can. He's thrown his Katanakachi right into the fray, and it's already lost a bunch of men. Now, this could be an attempt so that his line troops can now do more damage to Mag's line troops, but because of the nature of this map and how flat it is, he's going to end up actually shooting a lot of his own men. So this is very bad on Edward's part. Let's take a look at what Mag is doing. Mag is doing the same thing. He's going to run his Katanakachi around the building here. And while the line battle is raging on and the cav battle is raging on, and we'll take a look at how cav is very important sometimes in these kind of builds later, Mag is going to do the very basic thing here, and he's going to just run around the building. This is a very badly positioned Black Bear. These Katanakachi are going to hit this line with about 10 casualties at most. And they're going to chew it up here from the side. See, look how unprepared these guys are. Now they take their swords out, and they're already down to about 110 men. So it just shows you how effective a katana attack or any sort of melee attack can be to an unprepared line infantry unit. And this is going to be the basis of all the different ways that we use melee. The fact that melee wants to get up close and personal with you. It wants to close the gap in any way that it can by either using meat shields, or using cover that forests or hills provide, or by using some sort of distractive maneuvers on a different side of the battlefield so you can create an opening for yourself. And this is what the core of melee and using the way of the Bushido is all about. Also, people tend to bring Bushido generals when they have these kind of melee builds to give their units a bit of an edge, and then they can capture building with their cav, which is also, I guess, sort of an advantage. So let's get right into the more advanced stuff. Thanks a lot, Mag, for submitting this great replay. We saw the basics of how you should use your troops. Don't throw them in without an aim or purpose. Don't throw them in when you know they're going to be lost. Use meat shields. You saw that Edward didn't have any sort of meat shield. He just sort of committed his units, where in my opinion he should have sort of kept them in the back line and then moved around and dealt with the Katanakachi that Mag brought to the fight. But he didn't do that. So we're going to move to the next one, and this next one was submitted by my good friend, Mr. Reflex CSS or Pointman. And let's see if I can find it. What was its name here? There it is. 1v1 anti-camper. He has called it on the Kurobe Gorge. Seattle Steel Pointman or Reflex CSS playing against anti-camper AG. Kurobe Gorge. Kurobe Gorge, Kurobe Gorge. I'd say it's you know, it's a map that has a little bit of everything, really. It has rivers, some streams, good foliage, and it has 4 main hills that you can use. But when you want to bring a melee contingent, you need to do 3 things, my friends. You need to 1, look at the map, 2, look at the map, and 3, look at the map again. Looking at the map is essential because it could change the whole. Your whole build can change depending on the map. We're gonna see how Mr. Pointman has brought an ideal army for this map. Slow-mo, as usual. Pointman does these really whack builds sometimes, and I love to give him credit for it. He has brought an army that I have sort of showcased before, and in this particular fight, it's going to do an amazing job. Over here on the left, he's got a Boki. 2 Boki on each flank. He brings these to sort of distract the enemy cavalry. Some Yari Ki. We're not going to focus too much on his cav. We're going to focus on his main core here. Look at this. 1, 2, 3 spear levies. And these are going to... this is a supplementary kind of army because you can see he still has some rifles. He's going to use his spear levies as a meat shield, essentially, to help pave the way for his katanas at the back here. He's got Shogutai. And notice, his actual sword contingent isn't that numerous. It's just 2 units of Shogutai, so he's relying heavily on his meat shield to do the job for him. And then he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of musket line infantry, some black tortoise forces, some white bears, and some black tortoise. Yeah, black tortoise and a white bear. So this army might seem a little weak to some of you at first glance, but we're going to see how you can use this army to tip the balance. And this is something Melee needs to do and does really well, is tipping the balance. Point Man is up against Azure Dragon Force, some Marines, some own Chogatai, some Yariki. He's brought this guy, what's his name? Anti-Camper AG. He's brought some White Bears, some Azure Dragon Forces here, and I think he has some more infantry. Indeed. So, a pretty decent line contingent and a lot of good cav. I can't see his upgrades, and I hate people who do this. Why do people do this? I can't even see your upgrades, bro. I'll have to look at the flags to sort of tell if they have any upgrades. Like, this unit has some, this unit has some, this unit has some, this unit has some, this unit has some. But here we go. Let's see what Point Man is going to do. Well, the first thing that you notice is that there's a little bit of a hill in the middle here. And we're going to see how Point Man uses this to his advantage. He sends his cab up here to start capturing this building. He's essentially denying this Yariki as well, because he does have the Bushido general trait. This Boki has been sort of peppering the Yariki, again, to no great effect. And you can see over there on the left flank, those cav are being used as sort of a distractive force to sort of separate this half of the army. Now look what Point Man is going to do, and this is what any use of melee, be it supplementary or total rush, needs to do. You need to pinpoint your opponent's weakest point, and you need to commit to it, and prevent your opponent from reinforcing from any other area. And this applies to 1v1s, to 2v2s, and to 3v3s, and later on in part 2, we're going to see how it applies in 2v2s as well. But for now, we're looking at a 1v1 situation. Using this supplementary force, Point Man is going to wait to about the absolute last minute that these guys are at the bottom of the hill. He's going to begin cresting the hill now, positioning his men while his opponent's troops can't really get any shots. There he goes. His units, his spear levies are going to now begin meat shielding. And see now, if any shots were coming in, these guys would be taking the blunt of the force. So they're doing many things. They're taking the blunt of the force. They're preventing Cav from doing a middle charge up the troops for Point Man. And they've also distracted all these troops here. And now Point Man's own musket men can come in and just shoot shit up. They are uncontested now. And here comes the Katana Kachi. And you can see now Point Man is committing all of his army to essentially these 4 units. And if he takes them out, well, he's going to take out a good portion of this entire army. Look at how unprepared Anti-Camper was for this attack. He'd expected that this was kind of a map control kind of play. Sort of iconic of Point Man's use of, musket troops. He'll try to sort of surround you and sort of bring his army in like a pincer maneuver. But now he's doing the exact opposite with this build, and I think it's great. He's focusing on one weak point in his opponent's army. Look, he's still chasing away units, and he's gonna just crash into these troops that aren't even gonna get a chance to shoot. These units haven't gotten a chance to actually shoot at all. 22 kills, 24 kills, and these are Marines, my friends. So he charged the most expensive part of the army, and he did a really good job in pursuing it, and now he's still pursuing it to make sure that they're out and that they never come back. He's going to throw the rest of these troops now towards this side. Make sure that these elite troops don't bother the rest of his main part. And again, he's going to come on this side, throw in a meat shield. And again, what is the meat shield doing? These troops are shooting at the meat shield. I think Anti-Camper is being smart and actually targeting this Black Tortoise force at this point. But again, the morale shock is going to be and prove to be too much. And now with the support of his own cav, after using the meat shield, he can line up his own troops well. And now he can commit his troops to this side as well. So you can see that Point Man, in this supplementary sort of build, the whole logic behind his thought process is, well, I'm going to find a weak point in my opponent's army. I'm going to harass it and pepper it with my meat shields. I'm going to take the blunt of his first couple of volleys. I'm going to get my own musket troops in line. They're going to start shooting, and they're going to, with the help of my Katana troops, or in this case his Shogatai troops, they're going to help either push the enemy back, like they're happening here, effectively separating them from the rest of the fight, or wipe them out completely. And he's doing this really well in this fight. And now he's just going to continue to pursue the attack, and now you're going to see slowly There he is. He's going to shift his army here. He's going to deal with one side at a time. Notice that he never really engages on 2 full fronts at once with this army. If he does, he will be in big trouble. Again, now see, this part has been removed, and now he's going to shift his attention over here. He'll throw some units at you. He'll throw maybe a couple of these spear levies to help keep you back. And now here he goes again. Look, the spear levies screening the way for his Black Tortoise force, and now falling back again. And he's gonna keep doing this. And you can see Anti-Camper's trying to read it, but it's really difficult to deal with this because see, Point Man has already gotten troops set up on this side. And now at this stage, we don't really need to look at any more because you can pretty much tell that it's gonna be an easy victory. At this stage for Point Man. Great micro and great knowledge and understanding of the roles of his troops and how his supplementary contingents are going to help his army achieve their goals. So that's the first sort of instance of using a line corps and then bringing on the supporting melee troops. Again, thank you very much for Point Man. And one thing that we wanted to sort of look at here is that Point Man was focusing at one flank at a time. He was focusing at one chunk of his opponent's army at a time, and it just happened to be that his opponent in this battle didn't have a center. But in other battles where Point Man plays this, you'll see that he sort of focuses on the center most of the time, because most of the time you'll have elite infantry troops sitting on the flanks. He'll hit the center, use his cav to sort of surround and hit the elite troops on the sides, and then overwhelm the center with pure numbers and pure morale shock. But we're going to see now a fight here submitted to me by a guy of the name, I think his name is Timur, but I think his game name is Ziptor. I could be wrong. It is this one over here. We'll see his name here in a minute. Zaript, Zuptar, lol. Zaript. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, or if there are any sort of tricks. I don't know. I'm just gonna call him Zaript. He's playing against Kuhander, Tokai Valley, and Tokai Valley is going to help him a lot. Tokai Valley is a hilly map. It's a map that has a lot of foliage. Line infantry don't like this. At least a full line army doesn't particularly enjoy this map. And what we're going to see here again is going to be a supplementary use of melee troops to help a line corps, and this is going to be sort of the backstory of part 1 here. So here we go. These are the troops of Mr. Zaript. He's got some black bears on this side. He's got more black bears here, spear levies, and a good, very strong cav contingent. And then he's got some katana kachi, a royal marine, and there's his general. And the reason I wanted to show you guys this battle is that sometimes you don't want to be focusing on the bigger portions or even the center of your opponent at this kind of I guess this kind of situation. Your opponent doesn't really have a weak flank per se. I mean, he's presented you a very strong, solid line. So at this stage, I think Zarip knew what he had to do. He had to engage this army from the sides. If he would have just flat out ran forward and engaged these units in battle, first of all, he would have been up against heavily upgraded a heavily upgraded Kihatai and a heavily upgraded Black Bear, and he would have been up against an infantry marine and some Tosa riflemen. So what he needs to do is he needs to sort of present no front to his opponent. He needs to keep his opponent somehow pinned in the middle, but he also needs to be able to hit from the side. And let's see how he achieves this using his melee troops. He's going to be moving his Royal Marines and support them with Katana Kachi on this side. And let's just double speed here. Actually, let's triple speed a bit. And just notice how he's maneuvering his troops. Now, these troops over here, this is a makeshift center. Look at how Kuhander is positioned at this stage. His line is sort of confused. Some units want to stay up here to deal with the troops in the forest. Some units want to look up there to protect any sort of incoming charge. Some units want to hold the middle. He has essentially been dissected Zarep has now brought his troops from different sides and forced his opponent to start shifting his line, and now this is the ideal time for him to hit one flank, and he is going to do just that. He's in the forests, he's getting cover, his elite infantry is shooting into the fray, and now in comes his Katanakachi. And here we go. They're going to be running across. And notice how he's not moving his center at all. See? He's giving Kuhandar sort of the impression that the center has belonged to Kuhandar. He's given up the center in order to capture these forests and these high grounds, and this is great. But what's the use of melee here? Well, the use of melee is this. The fact that he is able to bring his melee around these trees, distract with some line fire, and now begin crumbling up essentially what was the strongest part of this entire line. See these heavily upgraded Black Bear infantry? They're gone. Heavily upgraded Kietai? They're gone. Infantry de Marine? They're gonna be gone soon. So what did he do? He moved his cutting edge, his strongest melee contingent, the Katanakachi, to a side where he knew he could distract his opponent. He distracted his opponent in the center, and then that allowed him to sort of creep his units up from the right side, from the left side, sorry, and hit the most lethal aspects of his opponent's army. Now, his opponent does have Cav positioned here. He could have used the Cav to sort of support his right flank, but we're gonna see here in a minute how this use of Katana has now baited the cavalry up. Now, this cavalry, I think, should have been moved up a little bit earlier, but now look at this. The moment that this Cav comes out, Zarep is gonna unleash 4 units of Cav at one time, and these Cav are gonna be forced to go back and not help the rest of the middle, which is now going to essentially crumble. Because now Zarep is going to begin clenching in his trap, and after he has given his opponent the center, he's going to collapse his own flanks onto that center and take it. So what did we see there? Well, we saw an excellent use, an excellent reading of the map, first of all. It seemed that Zarep had a game plan before he even entered the battle. He gave away a center in a sort of a ruse kind of maneuver, which is really good, really great. He split his troops up into the forests, into the high ground. He had his army hidden at most of the time, so his opponent thought that he was safe in the center. He thought that, you know, I got this. But then, out of these forests came 2 units of Katanakachi, and this single fact, the fact that he had 2 Katanakachi, essentially won him the battle, because I believe if these were like normal line infantry troops, they would have lined up and began exchanging shots with the elite infantry de Marine and the elite Black Bears, and they would have essentially probably lost that fight on that side. So great sort of vision here by Zarep to dissect his opponent's build as quickly as the battle started. He used the terrain really well, and then finally used that supplement that is the Katanakachi to end sort of the line or the whole army of Kuhandar. And that, my friends, is going to conclude part 1. In part 1, we talked about the supplementary usage of melee troops. We saw Point Man's great build, where he brings pretty good line infantry. Not great line infantry, pretty good line infantry. And then he uses meat shields to sort of ease his way into weak points of his opponent's army. He engages in mass, and then he uses distractive cav to keep his opponent on edge. We saw Zarep using the map, using his Katanakachi the way they're meant to be used, hitting those elite and expensive units. Those Katanakachi probably paid double their price. They cost the enemy double their price. And then we saw Mag's early use of how you should use the basic unit, just to give you guys a good idea if you have never used these melee troops. But before we move on to part 2, I wanted to talk a little bit about the weaknesses of melee troops. Well, the obvious weakness is that they're weak to getting shot. Whether they have armor or not, whether they're Shogutai or Katanakachi, they don't like to get shot straight up in the face. So try to avoid that. Have a meat shield is the solution to that problem, or use cover like Mag did, or bring them around the forests using hill cover or forest cover like Zarep did. Another thing is that it can be a very easy way to waste money. And by saying this is that sometimes when you're using these units, the thought of sort of throwing them away may become natural because you'd think, oh, well, they're going to get shot anyway, I need to push them in. Don't let yourself get trapped into that situation, because there is no reason to throw away any units. There is no reason to throw away your meat shields. Meat shields need to be used effectively. Don't just rush them forward without any support or without any sort of backline. And we saw each single player in this sort of part used his troops excellently, used his meat shields in a really good way. So that's great. And finally, another disadvantage to these troops is that they're very susceptible to cav charges. If they're not a Yarikachi or a Kyoto police force, a spear levy doesn't do too well against cav if it's charged from the back, and your katanas are always sort of in danger of getting mowed down by any sort of cav in the game. So we've noticed so far that almost every single melee supplement army that we have seen had always had some form of supporting cav or a lot of spears to sort of combat that. You need to support against cav when you bring these units. So in a sense, it throws more on your plate, it throws more micro on your plate, but if you use it properly, you get more rewards, and we've seen this in this part today. Stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to be talking about full brush armies, or quote-unquote all-ins, where we are going to be using a base melee army, no real line contingent, and we're going to use the fact that we have Russian mobility on our side to end our opponent's armies very, very quickly. Anyway, guys, stay tuned for part 2.